How did medieval knights actually win or lose if they were all covered in solid metal? There's a convention in Atlanta every year called Dragon Con. At this con, they have an event called Knight Fights. It is exactly what it sounds like. There is a professional league, look it up. 2 years ago, a dude lost his fucking finger during his fight by getting hit with a sword, getting it stuck in someone's face mask through his armor in a Sheraton Hotel ballroom. And this is intended for entertainment, not a fight to the death. There were a couple of ways that armored medieval knights were deemed to have won or lost an encounter. The first and most obvious was by getting killed. Armor is not 100% effective. It has seams and gaps and weak points. A blow with a maul or warhammer, for example, could still cause catastrophic damage even to an armored opponent, and swords could penetrate vulnerable spots like under the arms. But killing your knightly opponent might not be your goal. Knighthood was expensive. It took years of training and required specialized equipment, livestock, and support staff. It generally took a whole manor just to support one knight, so they tended to be wealthy and/or from the noble classes. That gave them a kind of camaraderie that often transcended the specific conflict being fought. It was customary for aristocratic knights to be captured and held for ransom. Basically, if you were disarmed in combat or otherwise compromised, for example you fell, the fight was deemed to be over and the defeated party taken prisoner. It became something of a game amongst upper-class people. Generally, the prisoner was treated as an honored guest until their ransom was paid, and sometimes even joined their captors on excursions. In many ways, knighthood was basically a private club for rich boys. Armor helps protect you from a lot of blows, but it doesn't make you invincible. 1. Oftentimes armor will deflect a glancing blow, but still be pierced by a direct hit. 2. Armor has gaps at the joints necessary to allow movement. Those gaps can be exploited. 3. Crushing weapons are still oftentimes effective for the armor to be light enough to move. It is thin enough that something like a mace or warhammer will smash through. It can crush the soft body within. On top of that, moving in armor is difficult, and getting disarmed or overwhelmed and cut off from support often meant a knight could be restrained and then killed or captured. Merlin turns into a germ and makes them get the bubonic plague. You push them to the ground and push a dagger through the gaps or even chainmail around the neck. Look up rondel daggers. Or concussive force. A steel helmet might stop your face getting cut up, but smash it with a hammer and your brain will get seriously rattled. Same on the torso, enough force from a warhammer or mace can stop the heart or collapse a lung. Many weapons were also designed to pace armor, like the spiked side of a hammer. Also, swords and plate armor were not super popular over the years. In fact, the more common plate is, the less common swords are, because they are pretty useless against plate besides specialist swords designed to thrust the gaps. It's more spears and boiled leather. You are also not always looking to kill the enemy, but rout the forces, for them to withdraw. And lots of angry guys with spears that you can't get to without getting stabbed is worth second guessing if you should engage or try talking again. The number one cause of death in war has always been shitting yourself. Most knights who died were because they shit themselves to death. I'm not kidding. In battle they got crushed a lot and spears were pretty good at getting through armor. Also, armor was incredibly expensive and most knights had partial suits or only wore mail, but mostly they shit themselves and died. Exhaustion actually was a big factor in pre-modern warfare. What you're too tired, stand up, you'll get overwhelmed, and somebody will hold you down and jab something long and sharp in between the plates of your armor. Medieval knights, despite being covered in metal armor, could win or lose battles by exploiting the weaknesses in their armor, such as gaps between plates, vulnerable areas like the face or neck, and by using specific weapons designed to penetrate the armor with thrusting motions, like lances, swords with pointed tips, or poleaxes, rather than relying solely on slashing attacks. Their skill, tactics, and the overall battlefield situation also played a crucial role. Armor wasn't all that great. You could be near invincible to a peasant with a sword or spear, but a prepared army or another trained soldier may have a weapon to deal with armor. That's exactly why blunted weapons were invented in the age of swords and arrows. I think it's whoever falls off their horse. They could still be wounded or killed wearing armor. They weren't covered completely. There were gaps that were left for movement. Some knights only used pieces of armor. Some armor was made more cheaply or poorly and could be penetrated. And sometimes they could just knock the person in armor out if they swung hard enough or used a weapon like a mace or hammer. Whoever gets stabbed in the armpit first loses. Spike weapons, crushing weapons, or knock them down and stab them in the armpit, or other places where there was armor. How long could you fight wearing all of the gear? 3 minutes, maybe. If it bleeds, it will die. You throw them to the ground, and either stab them through a gap in the plate or bludgeon them until they stop moving, either due to injury or otherwise. If you dent that metal, it can stab into the wearer. You got them in the head with a mace, they are getting concussed. A mace to the knee is gonna leave you with a broken leg encased in bent, twisted metal. It's not like they were walking tanks. They were just less likely to lose a limb or get stabbed in the back. Put a metal pot on your head, then hit it with a hammer. Metal armor doesn't do anything to stop blunt force trauma. 1. Sufficient blunt force trauma can brute force through metal armor, especially behind a big spike. 2. Grappling was a big part of fighting. Slipping a dagger through a chink in the armor or forcing off someone's helmet works. Read The Last Duel. Covers quite a bit on the topic. Swords can in fact pierce metal. Knights went 100 covered. Blunt weapons can cause a shit ton of trauma despite armor.